Hey everyone, Mr. Sujano here. Now there has been a ton of news about the PlayStation Classic coming out early December, and I want to talk about it. Let's get started. Now there is a lot of information out there and there are a lot of opinions, both good and bad, but mostly bad. And I can see where a lot of these people are coming from, and I'm on the fence on whether or not I like the PlayStation Classic, but let's just go over the details and some of the things that people are upset about. So first and foremost, the games list. The games list came out, so when the original PlayStation Classic was announced, people were hyped up about it, people were excited. Some people said the console's too recent to have a Classic Edition. Some people said that, Sony was just getting on the bandwagon that Nintendo had started. I don't really care about the bandwagon part of it. I'm all for retro gaming, so if they want to do this stuff with a PlayStation Classic or a PlayStation 2, I'm absolutely fine with that. I have no issues whatsoever. So there were a lot of people upset about the games list, and there are 20 games per region. So you can see here the different regions. Now there are common games to all regions. There are specific to North American, European, Korea, Southeast Asia, and then there are some games specific to Japan, Taiwan, and Hong Kong. Now I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the games list. I really don't care about the games list, and that opinion might be very unpopular with a lot of people. However, I did not care about the games list that was on the NES Classic or the SNES Classic. I did not care at all because I was modding them. I was going to add the games that I wanted on the system. I don't think you're going to find a list on any system that comes out that appeases absolutely everyone unless every single game is included from the system. Everyone has their favorites. Everyone wants to see a certain game on the system. And if this has the ability to mod, then honestly, the games list doesn't really matter because you can put whatever you want on the system. So in the box, you get the PlayStation Classic, an HDMI cable, the micro USB, I believe it's micro USB power supply, well, not power supply, just the cable to plug it in, as well as two controllers. Now these two controllers are supposedly compatible with PC. So these controllers are USB, and supposedly you can plug them in to a PC, and the PC will read them as a gamepad, which I'm really excited about. Now, yes, these are not the DualShocks that everyone likes. However, if these controllers are built well, the original PlayStation controller was no slouch. It was a great controller. Now, this here on the screen is a video from CNET, and this is one thing I want to point out about the controllers. Here's the USB port on the controller, and I see there may be an issue plugging this into a computer. So just something to be aware of. The way they designed this, you can see here it's to resemble the PlayStation controller port, so the big chunky plastic piece here on the USB. Now, depending on your computer and how your USB ports are set up, this may interfere with other USB ports. You might not be able to plug anything beside it, above it, or below it, because this is a fairly wide piece. You may need a USB extender or some other piece, maybe even a USB hub to plug this into because of the space. So it's just something I do want to point out that it may cause issue. And if I go to a website here called The Verge, there's a screenshot, or a picture rather, of the menu on the PlayStation Classic. And oh boy, this is not pretty. I will say some people criticize this a lot, and I can completely agree with it. This is not pretty at all. The way it functions does not look nice. It's not visually pleasing in the least. In terms of overall size, it stacks up to pretty much the other classic systems out there, where it's a fraction of the size of the original and fits in the palm of your hand here. Nothing special. It is kind of neat because it's nice and small, but I don't really see anything out of the ordinary. Like, this is exactly what I would expect when I saw the classic system. The PlayStation Classic is also heavily criticized for its use of an emulator. And I'm on the fence on this one. So Sony did not develop their own emulator. They just used one that's already out there. It's an open source emulator called PSX Rearmed. Is it the most accurate emulator out there? No. But then again, you could argue that the emulator on the NES Classic and on the SNES Classic is also not the most accurate emulator out there. So here are the details for the PSX Rearmed emulator. And I just wanted to give a shout out to the team that did program this, because obviously since it's open source, companies can come in and theoretically use it. And these guys end up not getting any credit. So I did want to highlight this because it's a really good team, and I actually really like the emulator. So you can see here, PCSX Rearmed is a fork of PCSX Reloaded. It differs from the latter in that it has special optimizations for systems that have ARM architecture-based CPU. PCSX Rearmed core has been authored by the PCSX team, Notaz, as well as Exophase. Now, the fact that they're using an emulator isn't necessarily a bad thing. It does give additional legitimacy to emulators out there. Sometimes they are even better than the actual system itself. They can play the games better, they can optimize games better than the initial system ever could. So I have no issues with emulators. I have no issues with the use of emulators. I have no issues with the big guns like Sony or Nintendo using an existing emulator out there. In my mind, it gives legitimacy to emulators out there and kind of strengthens their position overall in the retro gaming scene. And on top of this, a huge point that I want to make, with the NES Classic and the SNES Classic, if you did mod this, there is a massive chance that you put RetroArch on the NES or SNES Classic. My NES Classic, my SNES Classic, both have been modded. I've slapped RetroArch cores in them, and I have now the ability to play different systems on those systems. As for price, it's listed in the States for $100. In Canada, it's $130. It's fairly high priced in my mind for what you're getting. And I think that might be a sticking point with a lot of people. If it was lowered, if it was $60, $70 in the States, maybe if it was like $90 in Canada, it may seem a little more attractive, because I'll be perfectly honest, at $130 with only 20 games included, if you're not planning on modding it, you can just pick up an existing PlayStation 1 and probably most of those games for it legitimately. If you are planning on modding it and buying it solely to mod it, the Raspberry Pi is out there for a lot cheaper, and obviously I'm going to make that argument because on the NES and SNES modding videos that I put out, people were saying, why not just get a Raspberry Pi? Well, you can have both, right? I have the Raspberry Pi, I have the NES Classic, I have the SNES Classic. So I feel that this is a good transition now to overall my thoughts. I think it's going to be attractive to two different kinds of people. The first is obviously the die-hard PlayStation enthusiasts who don't care about the games on it. It's PlayStation. They've got a soft spot for Sony PlayStation. They're going to buy it. Trust me, Nintendo did that with me with the NES and SNES Classic. And the second type of person, provided this is moddable, are the PlayStation enthusiasts, but also the modding community. If you can mod this, you can add additional games. You can change the way the menu looks. You can, if those options are available, then this becomes considerably more attractive to those people. I think where this misses is for the average consumer who has no interests in modding, does not necessarily have a vested interest in the original PlayStation, and someone who's just looking for gaming. The lack of games on this, the lackluster presentation, may really discourage the casual market out there, which is a market I feel Nintendo really picked up on with the NES Classic and SNES Classic, with their library, with their presentation, with everything, the entire package. So maybe not a day one purchase, but something down the road. Anyways, that's all I've got for today. If you like my video, leave a like. If you didn't like my video, leave a like, hit that subscribe button, check out my other videos, and let me know what you think and what you've read and what you've heard and your overall opinion on the PlayStation Classic in the comments below. This is something I'm really interested in, and I love reading your opinions on it and your overall thoughts. Thanks everyone. Take care.